Hey guys, this one might be a duplicate, but one of them aired out, and I didn't want you guys to miss this because it was important. So we're on page 167. So if you've already gotten this one, then don't worry about it. Just continue on with the other ones. Vague flashes on the horizon, chapter 5. Little by little, with the passing of time, all opposition was dropped. At first there had been, as always for those who rise by their own efforts, slander and calumnies against Monsieur Madeleine. Soon this was reduced to mean remarks, then it was only wit, then it vanished entirely. Respect became complete, unanimous, cordial, and there came a moment, around 1821, when the words Monsieur the Mayor were pronounced at Montreuil-sur-Mer with almost the same accent as the words Monsieur the Bishop at Digne in 1815. People came from 30 miles around to consult Monsieur Madeleine. He settled differences, he prevented lawsuits, he reconciled enemies. Everybody voluntarily chose him as judge. He seemed to have learned the book of natural law by heart. A contagion of veneration had, in the course of 6 or 7 years, progressively spread over the whole country. One man alone in the city and its environs kept himself entirely free from this contagion, and whatever Father Madeleine did, he remained indifferent, as if a sort of unchangeable, imperturbable instinct kept him awake and on the watch. It would seem that in some men there is indeed the true instinct of a beast, pure and unassailable like all instinct, which creates antipathies and sympathies, which separates one nature from another forever, which never hesitates, never is perturbed, never keeps silent, and never admits to being in the wrong, clear in its obscurity, infallible, imperious, refractory under all counsels of intelligence and all solvents of reason, and which, whatever may be their destinies, secretly warns the dog-man of the presence of the cat-man, and the fox-man of the presence of the lion-man. Often, when Monsieur Madeleine passed along the street, calm, affectionate, followed by the benedictions of all, it happened that a tall man, wearing a flat hat and an iron-grained coat, and armed with a stout cane, would turn around abruptly behind him and follow him with his eyes until he disappeared, crossing his arms, slowly shaking his head, and raising his upper and lower lips to his nose, a sort of significant grimace that might be rendered as, "Who is that man? I'm sure I've seen him somewhere before. In any event, am not fooled by him." This individual, with an almost threatening gravity, was one of those who, even in a hurried interview, command the attention of the observer. His name was Javert, and he was one of the police. Javert is very important. At Montreuil-sur-Mer he carried out the unpleasant but useful function of inspector. He was not there at the time of Madeleine's arrival. Javert owed his position to the protection of Monsieur Cabellot, the secretary of the Minister of State, Comte Anglès, then prefect of police in Paris. When Javert arrived at Montreuil-sur-Mer, the fortune of the great manufacturer had already been made, and Father Madeleine had become Monsieur Madeleine. Some police officers have a peculiar expression, combining an air of meanness with an air of authority. Javert had this without the meanness. It is our conviction that if souls were visible to the eye, we would clearly see the strange fact that each individual of the human species corresponds to some species of the animal kingdom, and we would easily recognize the truth, scarcely perceived by thinkers, that from the oyster to the eagle, from the pig to the tiger, all animals are in man, and that each of them is each man, sometimes even several of them at a time. Okay, so skip the next 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs. Give a human face to this wolf's son, and you will have Javert. Javert was born in prison. His mother was a fortune-teller whose husband was in the galleys. He grew up thinking himself outside of society and despaired of ever entering it. He noticed that society irrevocably closes its doors on 2 classes of men, those who attack it and those who guard it. He could choose between these 2 classes only. At the same time, he felt that he had a powerful foundation of rectitude, order, and honesty based on an irrepressible hatred for that gypsy race to which he belonged. He entered the police. He succeeded. At 40 he was an inspector. In his youth he had been stationed with the work gangs in the South, so he was stationed with the prisoners. Before going further, let us describe Javert's human face. It consisted of a snub nose with 2 deep nostrils, bordered by large bushy sideburns, covering both his cheeks. One felt ill at ease on first seeing these 2 forests and those 2 caverns, When Javert laughed, which was rarely and terribly, his thin lips parted, showing not only his teeth but his gums. A cleft as broad and wild as on the muzzle of a fallow deer formed around his nose. When serious, Javert was a bulldog. When he laughed, he was a tiger. Beyond that, a small head, large jaws, fair hair hiding the forehead and falling over the eyebrows, between the eyes a permanent central crease like an angry star, a gloomy look, a pinched and ferocious mouth, and an air of fierce command. This man was a compound of two sentiments, simple and good in themselves, but he made them almost evil by his exaggeration of them, respect for authority and hatred of rebellion. And in his eyes, theft, murder, all crimes were merely forms of rebellion. In his strong and implicit faith he included everyone with a function in the state, from the prime minister to the constable. He had nothing but disdain, aversion, and disgust for all who had once overstepped the bounds of the law. He was absolute, admitting no exceptions. So he sees everything exactly in black and white. There is no gray area with Javert. On the one hand, he would say a public official cannot be deceived, a magistrate is never wrong, and on the other, they are irremediably lost, no good can come of them. He fully shared the opinion of those extremists who attribute to human laws an indescribable power of making, or if you will, of determining demons, and who placed Styx at the bottom of society. He was stoical, serious, austere, a dreamer of stern dreams, humble and haughty, like all fanatics. His stare was cold and piercing as a gimlet. His whole life was contained in two words: waking, watching. He marked out a straight path through all that is most tortuous in the world. His conscience was bound up in his usefulness, his religion in his duties, and he was a spy as others are priests. Woe to any who fell into his hands. He would have arrested his own father if he escaped from prison, and turned in his own mother for breaking parole. And he would have done it with that sort of interior satisfaction that springs from virtue. His life was one of privations, isolation, self-denial, and chastity, never any amusement. It was implacable duty, the police as central to him as Sparta to the Spartans. A pitiless detective, fiercely honest, a marble-hearted informer, Brutus united with Vidocq. Javert's whole being expressed the spy and the sneak, the mystic school of Joseph de Maistre, which at the time enlivened, the next, don't worry about the next three paragraphs. 4 paragraphs. Go to Javert was like an eye. Javert was like an eye, always fixed on Monsieur Madeleine, an unblinking eye, full of suspicion and conjecture. Monsieur Madeleine finally noticed all this, but seemed to consider it of no consequence. He never questioned Javert. He neither sought him out, nor shunned him. He endured this unpleasant, annoying stare without appearing to pay any attention to it. He treated Javert as he did everybody else, with ease and kindness. For some words Javert had let drop, it was guessed that he had secretly hunted up, with that curiosity belonging to his race, and which is as much a matter of instinct as of will, all traces of his previous life that Father Madeleine had left elsewhere. He appeared to know, and he sometimes said in a covert way, that somebody had gathered certain information in a certain region about a certain missing family. One he happened to say, speaking to himself, "I think I've got him." Then for 3 days he was moody and not saying a word. It seems that the clue he thought he had proved inconclusive. And this is the necessary corrective to any excess of absolute meaning that certain words may have presented, there can be nothing really infallible in a human creature, and that very peculiarity of instinct is that it can be disturbed and thrown off course. Were this not so, it would be superior to intelligence, and the beast would possess a purer light than any man. Javert was evidently somewhat disconcerted by the completely natural air and tranquillity of Monsieur Madeleine. One day, however, his strange behavior appeared to make an impression on Monsieur Madeleine. The occasion was as follows. Okay, so you're going to continue with Father Fauchelevent.